can't help when I listen to this music to start doing like get into it. Like I feel like I'm on vacation. Hello, Soul Questers. Thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of A Soul's Quest podcast. Today, we're going to be interviewing Omar, my partner, my best friend, my the content creator. This is all your fault. Just
saying. I'm nervous now.
Are you? No, you're not nervous.
I am.
Are you?
Yeah.
Well, I think
I got to put out all my dirty laundry out there and stuff.
You're going to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because I have some questions to ask. But
I'm a bit naked like the toad behind me. Yeah. Yeah. I got to come up with a name for him.
You should do that.
Rana or Mako.
Oh my God.
Look it up. Anyways,
okay.
Sorry. I play too much. I'm sorry.
You do. But that's okay. We want to keep it lighthearted and fun, especially when we're having a topic such as this, when we're talking about vulnerabilities and deep issues and things like that and circumstances. So, but I do appreciate you being here. How are you feeling good though? Besides nervous, are you feeling good?
No, I'm good. Today? I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I've come to terms with my demons. I have integrated them into myself.
Yeah, that's who you are today.
My shadow is very, we fought before. We know each other.
You know. All right. On that note, let's get started.
Okay.
So I'm going to do this the same way that we sort of did my interviews that you guys have already watched by now. Mm-hmm. And so I want to just start with the basics. Where were you born? What was your childhood like? Share, tell. Oh, I know you want to do it so bad.
I do.
Get it out.
I was born by a river in a little tent, just like the river I've been running ever since.
Okay.
Sorry.
Bring it back.
Yeah, well, you set me up, so I'm sorry.
I know I did.
I can't take anything
and that was
seriously.
okay. That's okay.
Okay, I'll stop. So I was born actually in Santo Domingo, which is the capital of the Dominican Republic. My childhood was spent in San Cristobal, which is about 20 minutes west of the capital. That was my place. It's a little town. I mean, it was
San Cristobal was?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the small towns. It's actually in the south part of the country. So
beautiful.
It's beautiful
country.
It's beautiful.
Right on the Caribbean.
Right on the Caribbean, Dominican Republic. Yeah. And I mean, it was nice. I don't have any. I love the place. I cried when I left.
So let me ask you this. That's sad. You cried when you left. Yeah, I get that though. I can relate. Mm-hmm. When you think about, because you were born in Dominican Republic in the 70s, right? Yep. What was it like then? What was that country like?
My childhood was fun, man. It's like I went to school from like 7:30 in the morning till 12:30. Came home, watched it.
I want to know, how did you get to and from school?
Yeah, you know this, right?
I do.
So at first, there was a horse and carriage. Oh. Yeah, there was a guy that came in a horse and a carriage, and we used to get in the back of the horse and carriage, and that's how we went to school. Ironically, I spent some time in the hospital because I fell off of one and the wheel of the carriage went over me. Yeah,
that's right.
My mom almost killed I forgot the guy's name, but
the horse driver.
The horse driver. Yeah, she almost killed him. But
I don't know what you call that, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
So
I just think that's such a unique story, a part of your.
I used to love that thing.
I'm sure you did.
It was so cool. Like sometimes they used to actually let me sit in the front and actually do the horse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I mean, it was cool. But then after that, I went to more primary school. Third grade or so, then there was a bus that came back. Mm-hmm. A lot of the times we just walked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You weren't that far?
No. We weren't that far from my school where I was, because we moved to different places. But we walked, and, I have friends, and it was not like an area in which, I didn't feel threatened or anything like that. It was a very safe, from where I
Your
came from.
perspective,
From my perspective, I have friends. We play. We came home around 12:30. We watched El Show de Mediodía, and then we watched Chespirito, and then after that we went out. We did our homework, went outside, and we played baseball until 6:00. They called us in. We had chocolate with some bread, and that was our dinner. Pretty much it. Yeah.
So, what was your relationship like with your parents? I mean, it sounds like it was a lovely time. So how was that?
Yeah.
I know how your mother is. I love your mother. So I'm curious to hear your.
So it's interesting because I kind of joke around with people, and I said that I'm a bastard. And actually, I am a bastard.
What do you mean by that?
My parents. Yeah, in what sense of the word?
No, what do you mean?
Bastard.
Like, yeah, there's two ways.
There's two ways.
connotations
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Well, it depends on how you tone it too. Like this bastard, or like, like it all depends. Right. So the story goes is this. I was like 2 years old when my parents divorced.
Okay.
And the reason for their divorce was as followed. One day, my mom saw my dad with another woman. So she wondered what happened, and it turns out that he was already married and had a family in the capital, in Santo Domingo, right? Which is like 30 minutes apart. So he had a family, kids older than me. He was married. So my mom married without knowing this. And as a consequence of her finding out, obviously, number one, she annulled the marriage
Right.
Right away. But there were a lot of consequences to that for her doing that. One in particular was her relationship with my grandfather kind of deteriorated because, again, you're coming from a culture in which you do what your husband says.
Yeah.
So by her making that decision and taking that stand, it isolated her from her dad, and not until many years later, they amended that relationship.
Okay.
But when it comes to my dad, I really he'll come visit once in a while. But even to this day, I mean, I'm cordial. I'm nice. I say hello. He calls me when one of my aunts tell him that it's my birthday or something like that or whatever. But I don't hold any ill wills towards him or anything like that. I mean, I've visited him a few times, just to say hello. And he, it didn't affect me and I didn't understand it much when I was growing up.
Right.
It was
at that age.
At that age, it was just normal. I didn't feel like I needed it. I have my mother and my mother did everything.
Okay. So then on that note, you had your mother. What was your relationship with your mother? Tell me a little bit more and sort of bring me to the place where there was a change in
Yeah. My mother was my everything growing up. It's funny because when I talk to her and I ask her, she likes to move around too much and she just,
high energy.
She's very high energy, very high energy. And sometimes
she's a doer.
She's a doer. And sometimes I just want her to come over to the house. I want her to sit down and tell me stories, right? That's kind of like what and then when we talk, I tell her things and she's like, muchacho. I mean, how do you remember these things? And I'm like, because I saw you doing it, right?
Yeah.
And to me, my mom was my everything, right? My mother is a very independent woman. She's a person that I looked up to because of the things that I've seen, right? She was always an entrepreneur. She was always someone that wanted to be independent. And I guess that's the reason why she had to make the decision of, separating from my father, right?
Right.
And struggle as a single mom in Dominican Republic, right? Which is not, it's not easy. So, and she finished 5th grade, but then she went into school to learn how to be a beautician, right? And as far as I could remember, she always had her own little salon. And it was at our house, and at first she had one and it was behind a hardware store, and then we live in a wooden house that had like a dirt floor in the back, and it would rain, water would just go right through it. But she worked like right up front, and then on the weekends I will go and like sweep and do that stuff. And then she did that. We moved to different places, and that's what she did, but that's what I've learned, that like that part of me, that gene of being independent. It's like I seeing it from her, her and my aunt Tia Cruz, those two women are like my two mothers.
Yeah.
It's
Why
like,
do you say that?
because it was always them, it was always the two of them. Like I never, myself, my sisters, we never.
Your sisters are your.
They're okay. So like family, right? What is family, right? So you have a brother. You have a brother because a brother came from your mom and your dad, right? So I have two sisters, and they're my sisters. They're not my cousins. They're my sisters. It's like, you have Mari, who is Tia Cruz daughter, and you have Jahaira, who is Tia Alicia's daughter. But the three of us were always together. We grew up together.
So you consider them your sisters?
They are my sisters. It's not a consideration. It's like, this is who they are.
Okay.
So when we're living in that aspect, it's like the two of them, particularly Tia Cruz and my mother, they work. My aunt was a nurse. She went to university, she did everything, and she was a nurse, and she worked really, really, really hard. My mother was the entrepreneur of the family somewhat, and then she just went on her own. And as a little kid, I'm seeing this, like I went to D-top school in Dominican Republic. I went to Instituto Politécnico Loyola.
As a result of her working hard.
Yes, yeah, without help from my father, and it was just the two of them, My sisters went to Catholic school. I mean, from the age, as far as I could remember, all three of us went to Catholic school, and like really good education. And my mom used to tell me all the time, even when I was little, it's like, I can't give you anything. I don't have any money. I don't have anything. All I could give you is an education. Which turned out to be problematic for me a little bit later on down the line. Right. And we'll talk about that later, I guess. But, those two women and my mother, they were my heroes, and there's things that are good and bad about parents and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about some of the trauma. But when I look back, it's like I was always taken care of, I don't know what poverty is. And it's not like we didn't have a car, we rented, but I can't tell you that I know what poverty is, because I have never in my life have ever gone hungry because those two women. And I don't know how other way to kind of like explain it, No,
you sound very passionate about these two women. So bring me to, because obviously I know the story. Can you just kind of talk me through, okay, you have a really wonderful relationship with your mother and your aunt. Tell me about some of the traumas that you experienced with with relation to your mom and the situations that you had to go through leading up to.
Yeah. So when I was about, I think it was 7 or 8 years old. I don't remember exactly the time. I was actually, I believe I was getting into 5th grade. Or going from 4 to 5th or something along, I don't remember, something along those lines. My mother made the decision to move to New York, and because obviously she just wanted a better life for us, but try to tell that to a little kid, right? So it's like, that's not how this works, I mean, like my mother used to take us everywhere, in Dominican Republic there's merengue bands like Fernandito Villalona, you have like Johnny Ventura, Sergio Vargas, those type of people. It's like the equivalent of going to see Bon Jovi or Michael Jackson and things like that from that country. Like we always went to those things, and we were like the only little kids there, I got pictured with Fernandito and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, that was with my mom, and she made it a point for us to kind of like be always involved in something, in basketball, judo, my sister and all that. It was always something. But then when she decided to leave, that kind of like was just weird. And I remember that night, and it was about 2:00 in the morning, and I typically don't go to sleep till then. I had to go to school the next day, and my grandmother was there, and she left. and I looked at the window and I was crying and my grandmother was holding me. I'm like, and I remember that day because it was like, you know, that cry, that ugly cry that is like the emptiness inside, like everything is like, it was that.
Yeah.
You know, and she left, and
so that was it. You didn't see your mother after that. She
for
left.
a little, she left, and I remember that people used to tell me all the time, because at the same time after she left, you know, my aunt was, again, in retrospect, again, when you're a kid, you don't think about these things, but now when you're adult and you have the faculties of thinking, and then you start really looking at what happens, right? It's a different story. But at that time, my aunt was a little bit abusive, you know, and I used to get a lot of whippings for no particular reasons and things like that. And she used to, you know, she took I think she took a lot of her frustrations out of me, because it is a lot of pressure.
Yeah, maybe those frustrations.
Yeah, but again, it's like, as a kid, you don't understand this.
No.
Yeah, I could tell you that now as an adult and thinking about it.
Nor does that warrant the abuse of behavior. So go ahead.
No, it doesn't. But one of the things that I've learned as you go along, it's like people always only do what they've been taught to do.
They know how to do. You're right.
And until there's something different that you show them the alternative,
right,
then they will continue to always do that.
Exactly.
But it takes an education, and it takes like the conversations to be able to happen to make those changes, you know. But during that time, as we go on progressing in time, that time was a very, very lonely time for me, right? So I had my sisters, and I you know, when I used to get hit, and this is kind of like the things that I remember, used to get a whipping or anything like that, I had my own room. And you know, when kids cry when they're little, you know, I want my mommy, I want my daddy, you know, I didn't do that. And then when I said, where's God when all this? Like, I think at that early age, I started like doubting, you know, although I continue in Catholic, you know, being Catholic and going to church and all that stuff. Like, I started doubting because I had good grades in school. I didn't do bad things or anything like that. I was just always like a little nerd and stuff, you know. But all this stuff was happening to me. And I have a dad and I have a mother, and then my aunt is beating me right now. And all that stuff was happening all at the same time. So I felt like I had nobody. So like, I just went inside, you know, and then that kind of like, I really didn't talk to people. And I was always like a quiet kid. You know, some people, you know, I mean, but you're a kid, but I was always shy with girls and things like that. They used to call me that. My sister used to say, "Tu seré palomo," and that means like you're afraid of girls and all that kind of stuff. And you know, she used to make fun of me like that. But you know, that time alone was hard that time. But again, in retrospect, it was like one of the greatest things that happened to me.
So did you, as a result of your mom not being around, did you experience, besides being beat, you know, by your aunt, who is a lovely woman, by the way, I love her. So I know what you mean by that. But what other, did you experience any traumas? Did you have difficulties in school? Did you tell me about that?
Yeah,
like, it couldn't have been easy to be alone, so to speak.
The other trauma, and I think the peak of everything that happened started like taking place when my aunt came back from Venezuela, and that's a different aunt that I don't really want to kind of like talk about that. And one of the things that I remember that I got in trouble in school. Never did, but that day I did. The night before, one of my aunt, not the acquisition, it's another person, has sex with her boyfriend next to my bed, and I was there, and it was weird. I mean, to say the least.
A little strange.
I mean, to say the least. But I went to school the next day, and I was falling asleep in class. And again, this is a very Catholic school. It's like very regimented. It's like, you know, you got to be alert. You got to do all that stuff. And that week, and I remember every Friday we used to get a ticket so we could go to the movies.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to sing in front of everybody, right? That was kind of like one of my things. That week, I didn't get that ticket because I was falling asleep all throughout class. And what I remember, it was like I couldn't sleep because this woman was doing that, like, next to my bed. And that's something that really, really, like, it was disturbing. You know, I mean, I don't know what else to put it. It was just weird, you know, just weird. Like, how would you know, but it happened. You know, what am I supposed to do now? It's just like, it just happened. So you got to just kind of like go from there. So those two traumas were like the ones, you know, that happened. I mean, thinking about something else, when I was very young, you know, one of my cousins made me touch her down there.
So you experienced a little bit of abuse here and
there. Yeah. I mean, physical.
So you experienced sexual abuse?
Yeah, I mean, like, again, it's like when you think about it not as a kid, you don't think about it as a boy. As a boy, it's like, oh, that's great.
Oh,
you know,
of course.
Yeah, you know, like we think about that, yeah. But as a young person, you know, you're thinking about being 5, 6 years old, and you know, somebody touches, you know, wants you to touch them in a particular situation. She's like, you know, it's like, you know, way to go, boy, you know, or how does that affect you? I don't,
for males is that they, and I think I've heard about this, you know, I've read about this, that males, people joke about that. Like, exactly. You couldn't have been abused. That must have been amazing. But I think that
you're like, dude, you're lucky.
Your experiences have, for all intents and purposes, affected you in a manner that has gone with you through your whole life, basically.
But the ironic thing is that when I look back at those memories now, I mean, like, we've been talking about it, I'm kind of like joking and saying, oh, but it's not what it is. Like, it took a while to get to that point.
Right.
You know, it took a while to get there. It took a while to be able to look at those situations and decipher them, confront them.
Right.
Because I guess you're going to talk about that later, because it wasn't easy to confront them.
Sure.
But come out with a different perspective at the end.
Right. Okay. So now that you've gone through all these situations and, you know, sex abuse, your mom leaving, the issues with your dad or him not being around, how did you deal with that? How did you deal with the loneliness? I'm sure that, because you said that you felt that it was lonely time. How did you deal with that?
Well, like, I had a couple of reprieves. Like, in the summer, I had an aunt that and she had a lot of my cousins, and I used to go to her house all the time in the summer, you know, and
you used to stay there.
Yeah, for the entire summer, and it was like in the country. So I mean, she was great. I mean, she was lovely, and my cousins were like super cool. We used to play together, and then I used to hate it. I have to go back, you know, but I had to, you know. At that point, it's like, what do? You just have to get through it. I thought about running away a couple of times, you know, but in the same token, it's like, where am I going to go? It's like, I don't want to go out and live in the streets, and you know, so it was things like that you just, I don't know, I just got through it, you know, and it's like, I just had to live through it. I don't know what other ways to cope except that. I mean, I was still, I did good in school. I was always like in the top, always in the top.
So you came back for all intents and purposes. How long was it before you actually take us through, like, when you finally did you reunite with your mother, or what happened there?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us more about that.
So a couple of years later, actually, I believe I was just finishing the 6th grade.
Okay. How old were you at this point?
I believe I was turning 11. That year, and my mom came back, you know, again, and throughout this time, like,
how many years was it? I'm sorry to cut you off. How many years was it from the time she left and the time she came back? How many years?
I think it was between like 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
I mean, something along those lines. Yeah, something along those lines.
She came back.
So she came back. At this point, she was married.
Oh,
right. And then was
that shocking? Or you were just like,
no, I mean, she told me before, but we never really talked much because I was always told, don't tell your mom anything because she's going to be worrying, You know, it's like, don't tell her that you're getting hit. Don't tell her that this is happening to you. So all that stuff, I
so all of your troubles that you were experiencing as a child in her absence, you were not even allowed to. So you had to. I had to bottle these things.
Just had to take it.
How is that for you? That must have been difficult.
It's like you live through it. Yeah. I don't know what other way. I don't know what other say anything else to say at that time. And it's almost like again. So when I used to go to sleep, cry. You know, and then realize that there was nobody coming.
Right.
You know, there's no, my daddy's not coming, you know, and it's no, I'm here. This is kind of like
you felt alone.
My alone, yeah. And then it was like to a certain point, it's like I actually started fighting back with my aunt. I started fighting back, you know, like I used to hold her and just say, listen, don't hit me anymore. And I'm a little kid, you know, it's like, don't hit me. So like I had that impulse to kind of like, this is enough. And then my mother came back, and then we have like different Spanish words are a little bit different, you know.
Explain.
So for instance, like you, right? It's just you, right? There's no
in the English language.
In the English language, right? There's no formality. You're just you, right? Or you have the respect, but for certain people like sir, madam, and things like that, right? In Spanish, you have tú or usted, right? So when I was growing up, I always called my mother mommy, right?
Yeah.
When she came back, I didn't even call her tú. I called her usted.
Which is
this is like the very formal way of referring to someone, right?
That's how I refer to your mother.
Yes.
For example.
Yes, because because the reverence is the elder part. But I used to call her usted, which is to her, actually when I told her that, she said, why are you telling me that? Why are you not calling me mommy? But ever since that point, I have never called her mommy. I always called her ma.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like, there was like this realization in me that, you know, again, it's like looking back, it's easier to kind of like make sense of it all.
Sure.
But when you're there, that's kind of like how you're feeling. And then that kind of like, that kind of got even a little bit worse, because the reason why she came back was to take me away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So tell me more about this.
Yeah. So right after 6th grade, like, you know, and I wanted to go to like there was like different campuses for the younger kids for elementary school, and then 7th and 8th grade we're going to like a different campus with the big kids, you know. And this is like
excited.
So I was excited.
Yeah.
And I was cool. I was like, you know, I was like the popular kid. I was singing. I was in the Boy Scouts over there. I was like, you know, I was like hanging out with the older kids and doing cool stuff.
You were your normal Omar self.
I was like kind of like finding my way and all that kind of stuff. And then she came and she's like, we're moving to New York.
So it's just like this complete like disruption of things are starting to get normalized. I do air quotes here.
I have friends. Everything was getting better. I was kind of, my aunt wasn't hitting me as much because we kind of like had our thing. We're standing up for myself and all that kind of stuff. And then boom, she says, she comes, she's married, she's all this. And then she says, we're moving to New York.
Wow.
And I hurt. I mean, like that, this is like I left, and within a matter of like a month or so.
Wow.
I was in New York City.
I wanted to answer for you, but what is that like? You went from a country that is, for all intents and purposes, still an impoverished island, right? Or country.
Yeah.
It's the country, you're, you know, riding on horses and playing in the country in the summer. And then you go to New York. And most people know what New York is like. I mean, it's like, what part of New York do you go to? Upstate?
No, we went to the Bronx.
A suburb? We went to the Bronx.
Hey, what chill? Oh, come down. Don't judge the Bronx.
It's a city. No, the Bronx is great. Listen, my dad was born in the Bronx.
Okay.
My dad was born in the Bronx. So, and even though I don't have a great relationship with my dad, I have a strong, like, I have a connection to New York because I've been there so many times because of you.
Yep.
And I was there even before I met you, and I loved the city. But what was that like? It must have been like this culture shock for you. Was that what it was?
It was a little overwhelming. You know, because there's noise all the time, you know, and when we first moved, the train station was there. So every night you hear the train. So at first it's like, you had to get used to all that stuff. So like the noise, and then one of the things that kind of like struck me was the fact that you always had to be vigilant. You know, like, you know, you come from a place where you walk from school and it's no big deal. You go outside and you play baseball with your friends. You know,
mean like you had to be like more aware, right?
But in New York, it's like one of the things that once you get in there, it's like they make sure. My mom and my stepdad at that time my dad. You know, they make sure that you understand that you have to be vigilant. You know, that it's just like you can't just be freely willy, you know, all that stuff. And I learned that the hard way, like the first couple of weeks in school, because I was during the summer, I was helping my mom in her salon where she works. So I say, you know, I used to go in there like sweep, and then the ladies would give me like a couple of dollars and stuff like that. And I wanted to get this Yankee hat that had like little little diamond things up front. And I bought the hat and I was so excited and I saved my money. And like the first couple of weeks, like in school, I get on the bus and I'm sitting, like, if you ever remember the bus, there was a seat that was kind of like not facing forward, but facing sideways. So you'll sit this way so you could look outside the window, right? And I was sitting like that, just in my own little dream world.
Minding your own business.
Minding my own business, not even thinking about it. And then these two kids that were getting up the bus, you know, one just kind of like reached over, grabbed the hat, and just took off running. You know, and I'm just like sitting in there, and everybody on the bus is just like, you know, sitting there. It goes. And then that was like my introduction to New York. It's like, you know, because I didn't have no friends. I was like starting school, you know, and it was ESL, so it was like that's when you started getting kind of like used to it. But it was, you know, it was interesting. It was different, you know. I really didn't like it.
Okay,
to be honest with you.
So then what? So you're in New York, you're in this different arena. How did you get situated? What happened? And bring us to like your experiences, because now you were in middle school when you were in DR. So you were in middle school in New York.
Yes, 7th and 8th grade.
So then
junior high.
You did good in junior high, and then you went into high. Like, tell me about your high.
Let me take you to like what happened. Okay. Like, so in junior high, 7th grade, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, IS 115. That's where it's right there between.
Shout out.
Between Walton and Morris Ave. You know, so so I went there, and now I started getting, you know, now you start getting there acclimated and all that kind of stuff, and you start getting comfortable, you starting understanding, you know, and this and that, and you start making friends, so you start kind of like used to it. But at first I hated it, you know, like I really hated it. Aside from getting my hat stolen, a couple of weeks after that, somebody broke into our apartment and stole, like, my dad just bought a new CD player, and they went in and they stole it, and it was just like, you know, they broke through the fire escape, and it's like, man, there's crackheads everywhere, because they go and they steal it. They go back and steal it in the salon, you know. They go, hey, look, I got this, I got that, and my mom had the salon and all that stuff, and then, you know, that's how they get the deals. But that's, you know, life in New York. So I went through junior high school, you know, I was shy, like, you know, I had this crush, and then was Davis, and I had like this crush on this girl, and I never said anything because I was just afraid. And my sister the other day was making fun of me because she was like, how is it that you're such a paloma? It's like, you know, you like, what's that girl in junior high school that you used to like and never said anything, you know? And it was like that. I was like shy, but I was always a good student, but I didn't mind like being on stage and doing that stuff. But like one-on-one, I was like super quiet. So like I have very few friends and all that kind of stuff. Then after that, my mom said, you know what? You can't just stay home after school. Okay. You got to find something to do. Okay. So a friend of hers told her about the Boy Scouts, right? And there was Troop 208, which was it was in the Bronx, and my mom decided to put me in there. I hated it, because I was the only I was the only kid there that like spoke Spanish, and everybody else spoke like a little bit of Spanish, but it was all broken Spanish, like, you know, like not even Spanglish, because they're kids, you know, they're like, and I'm like, you know, and I'm like, whatever. So like every Monday came around, I was like, I would make any excuse not to be able to go. I got too much homework. I have a headache, my stomach hurts, my foot hurts because of this and that and the other. So I used to make every excuse in the book not to go, right?
She wasn't having it?
Oh, no, my mom was not having it, right?
Okay.
My mom was not having it. So what she did was, she's like, oh, yeah? Okay. You and I are going to go to the bus, go to the place, which was a church, right? And then she will sit she will sit on the stand.
She stayed there with you.
With all the kids there. And my mother will be like one of the only parents sitting on the stand, making sure that I came and I didn't leave.
Okay.
So that happened like for like consistently. Like she makes sure that I went every Monday. Like, if you don't go, that your ear is gonna get twisted.
So then what happened as a result of
I met the people that will completely change my life forever. And there's 3 people in particular. The first is he's like my best friend. I consider him my best friend to this day. He's like the only one true friend that I've always had, which is Danny Gumbrell. Shut up, Danny. What's going on?
Danny, what's up?
Right? And the other 2 people are Betty Medina and Ken Mullen.
Wow.
So I met them there, and then from that point, like...
Now, what were their roles like?
Sure. So Ken Mullen was actually the troop leader.
Okay.
For Troop 208.
Right.
And then Betty Medina was kind of like his partner. Her assistant. So they ran the.
They were husband and wife, or they were. No. She was the assistant.
Yeah, they just always worked together.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, they always worked together. So
they ran this troop.
They ran this troop, right? Okay. And then he actually told my mom, "Don't worry about it. He's going to learn English here, and he's going to be fine. Just don't worry about it."
She eased her.
He eased. Okay. Ken eased my mom's mind.
Ken spoke Spanish?
No, but just people understand each other somehow. I don't know.
Communicate with the hands.
Listen,
your mother is a closet English speaker, so I get it.
So that's what my mom said, because she said he's going to learn here. So
you say these people changed your life forever. Yes. What happened? Okay, that's a big statement.
It is a big statement, but it's a true statement. And again, it's not just me. It's like there's been a lot of young people in New York, in the Bronx in particular, and that have been impacted by Betty.
Okay.
And also by Ken,
Right.
I mean, so what happened was that summer, we went into summer camp, right? So we had to spend like 3 weeks up in the Catskills in a place called TMR, 10 Mile River. Just goodbye, best luck camp in TMR, hats off to victory, and then is boom, jiggity boom, hey, boom,
okay.
Anyway, so it's like, we used to have a lot of fun. So that summer, I still...
So you went from being like, I hated
it. What?
So like amazing.
I wouldn't say amazing at first. I was like, okay, I'm going in here. Let me just go. I mean,
you didn't have a choice.
I didn't have a choice at first, right? Okay. So that summer we had, we went up to TMR. I was still learning English and kind of like getting acclimated to like all the other stuff, right? And then I was getting better. But like the thing is that in that troop, we had like older kids, younger kids, but like everybody was like very supportive of me. Like they knew that I didn't speak English as well, but they accepted me like without judgment. And the thing is that it's interesting because our troop, like, there's a lot of controversy about using certain words and all that kind of stuff. But in that troop, we have like Eddie, who's a white dude, and Saul and Dione, Jose. You got all these guys who are like older than us, and we look up to those guys, right? But they just treat you like you're a little brother, and they took care of you, and they're different colors, white, black, there's like, and we all they just get along, but they made you feel comfortable. And I remember this because this is one of the things that I really appreciate about that time is that even though I wasn't really speaking English that well, one of the things that they did is that they had me do the roll call. And what I mean by that is that you in TMR you have like the hall, the dining hall, and then all the troops, because it's not just your troop. There's troops from all the greater New York area that came in. So you have about 20 to 30 troops with about 60 kids each, right? So you have all that. And then, so once in a while, you get together and you have to do roll call. So you got to stay in front of your troop and you got to go to the roll call, right? And so they went, you know, you have all these troops and everybody, one person from each troop has to get up there and say, troop, all present, I got the front sire, right? And then, so Dion told me, you got to do it today. And I'm like, huh? And I'm like, and everybody's, yeah. I mean, like, this is kind of like the encouragement that you're getting. And it's like, yeah, you could do it. So I went in front of the line and all that kind of stuff. And I get up there and I'm shaking and I'm sweating and I'm nervous. And you got to stand up with your uniform. You have to be like, And then you got to go, troop 208, sir. And everybody's like, yeah. I go back there and I go next to Danny and he's like, I don't know what the fuck you just said, man. But you did good. But it was like, it's like funny things like that happened in your life that is like, you know, you get it. And you build like really good relationships there. So what happened after that is that summer, Ken has always struggled health-wise, you know, and so he was out for a little bit. And then he came back, but there was somebody else running the troop, and he didn't want to. Vinny was running the troop, and he didn't want to kind of like take that away from him. So then he decided to open up a different organization.
Okay.
So he asked a couple of kids, and I was surprised that he asked me because I wasn't speaking. You know, I was just whatever. He asked a whole bunch of kids, "Hey, I'm starting this new thing, and I wanted to know if any of you guys would be interested in being the leaders of that group."
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was like, shit, I don't know what you're doing, but I want to go. It's like, you know, and that's how I became the junior assistant patrol leader for Troop 5, Troop 2. We actually had Danny, myself, and George Storr. We had 2 troops and 2 packs that we were responsible for. So what we did was every summer we go to one of the hotels up in the Catskills, and we actually planned an entire year of programming.
Oh, wow.
So
you were really, when I go back to you saying that these people changed your life forever, this is the start of that.
You ever heard of WIFMs, right? Like that's something that is like popular. Like people say WIFMs now. It's kind of like a popular thing.
What does WIFMs mean?
What's in it for me?
Oh, okay.
Right. And I learned that when I was 13 years old. Danny, myself, George. Yeah. I mean, our meetings were planning sessions that lasted weekends.
Okay.
You know, so we're sitting there like brainstorming, and it's like we go around until nobody has anything to say. And if you stop too soon, you had to come up with something. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter what it was. You could say whatever ridiculous shit you wanted to say, but you did not stop. And Ken make sure that we went around to make sure that we brainstormed. Then after that, based on what we wanted to do, then we had to figure out what is the best possible solutions for this. And then you had to come up with a plan for that. So we had to back up and do all these different things. Now, we are 13, 14-year-old kids.
I was just going to say, you guys are young.
Young. I
mean, you're young adults, so to speak.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that Danny and I were just starting high school at that time, right? And everybody else was older. But we spent that was like our training on thinking, on planning, on solving problems, on understanding what the objective is, and then be able to figure out how to get there and understand that along the lines, you're going to have to adjust. Right. So that was the training, but that was like the planning. That was like the head part. Right. After that, we had to go and implement it. Right. So we have all these new kids. Right. It was quite a few leaders that went, and then we started implementing it. At the end of it all, it ended up just being Danny and I.
Oh.
And George, because George wanted to do it more frequently, but he was, you know, he went to school and he did all kinds of extracurricular stuff. Danny and I were just the ones left running 2 troops and 2 packs.
Nice.
And it was good. You know, it was like something that was really, really interesting.
So what I'm hearing you say then is that Ken gave you an opportunity to be exposed to decision making,
Yes.
problem solving,
Yep.
leadership skills.
Yeah.
That you were so what I'm getting at is this is what you mean by that changed your life forever, because this introduced you to an arena that you were like, wow, I'm actually good at this. Like this is something that this is important to me.
I want to tell you this story because I think this is kind of like interesting, because it kind of like denotes what we're talking about, like how it really changed our lives, right? Like Danny and I were having a conversation not too long ago about the fact that it's like, if we wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for what Ken taught us to do. Wow. And not so much that, it was the fact that he was, I mean, he's a former New York City Irish cop, right?
Right.
That was tough.
Yeah.
Like, we revered him.
He didn't seem tough.
No.
He was so sweet.
Yeah, to you.
I had the pleasure of meeting Ken. And I'm
to you, I mean, but like, here's a man that we loved dearly, and we feared him, and we revered him at the same time. But he was someone that would put me, like, he would take you aside and he would talk to you to make you understand that you're better than this. You know, it's like, you're much more than this. I remember this one time I was having like a really, really hard time with my mother, and he's like, you and I are a lot alike. It's like, you're very selfish and I'm very selfish, because you know what you want, you know, but you gotta stay consistent and you gotta be true. I mean, this is the freaking conversations that you're having with a 13, 14-year-old, you know, and then he follows that up with letting you be responsible to take about 60 kids in the subway in New York City, trusting that you will never lose any one of those kids.
Wow. That's deep.
It's powerful. And when I think of leadership, and when I think of kind of like how I wanted to conduct my life, Ken gave us this gift when Danny and I had our confirmation in Catholic school, and he gave us he gave this little anecdote, and then he gave us $100, and he gave us a $2 bill, which is still that I carry to this day, and I gave it as a present in my wedding. I did not give the $100 because I don't have that much money.
No,
right?
You spent that.
Yeah. So he told us the lesson, and I want to kind of like finish this part with that anecdote, because he told us that $100, I don't want you to save it. You need to spend it. You cannot save it, because he knew that like Danny and I were just kind of like stash money aside so that we could do. But he said, you have to spend it, right? Because I want you to understand that money and power is only temporary. Yeah. And the only way that you could actually use power is by influencing others the way you live your life. I'm fucking 15 years old, and this is the lessons that I'm learning, right? Yeah. Like, about what real power is. It's not about, oh, I'm this, I'm that, and the other. So when you have that standard in your life, now you have to live up to that. You know, it gives you that, and I do something different. You know, it makes you feel like a hero, that somebody believes in you so much that these are the things that they tell you. Yeah. You know, and this is a white man. Yeah. You know, and it's like, it's and people might say, what? You know, because I tell them all the time, it's like, I don't see color. I don't care, because he didn't care. Right. He only looked at me for what I was. Right. And that's what I appreciate.
Wow. So I know we can go so much deeper into this, but I know that we have to come to an end. And I thank you so much for sharing. Please join us for the next episode of Omar's interview.